Palestine, a land steeped in history, now embroiled in a struggle for survival. For decades, the Palestinian people have faced oppression and displacement. Violence has erupted, casting a long shadow over the region. The world watches, captivated and horrified, as a humanitarian crisis of immense proportions unfolds. This is a story that demands to be told, a story that the world can no longer afford to ignore. The year 1948 marked a turning point in history, the year the State of Israel was established. But this momentous occasion came at a devastating cost for the Palestinian people. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were forcibly displaced from their homes, their lands lost, their lives irrevocably altered. This mass exodus created a refugee crisis that continues to this day. The events of 1948 are not merely historical footnotes, they are living ruins. The Nakba was a pivotal moment that set the stage for the ongoing conflict. Following the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel occupied the West Bank and Gaza Strip. This occupation has become synonymous with systemic oppression and human rights violations. Palestinians face a daily reality of checkpoints, movement restrictions, and the constant threat of violence. The construction of Israeli settlements in the occupied territories further exacerbates the plight of Palestinians. Palestinians are denied basic freedoms, their lives controlled by a complex web of military regulations and discriminatory laws. This institutionalized discrimination has created a deeply unequal society. In recent years, the situation in Palestine has reached a fever pitch. The delicate peace has shattered under a new wave of violence. Images of destruction and despair flood our screens, a stark reminder of the human cost of this conflict. The trigger for this latest escalation is complex, a culmination of decades of oppression and frustration. The Palestinian people are fighting for their very survival, resisting the slow death of occupation. The power imbalance between Israel and the Palestinians is stark. Nowhere is the brutality of the conflict more evident than in Gaza. This tiny strip of land has become a symbol of Palestinian suffering and resilience. Subjected to a crippling blockade, Gaza has been described as the world's largest open-air prison. The people of Gaza live in a perpetual state of humanitarian crisis. Basic necessities like clean water, electricity, and medical supplies are in perpetually short supply. The world watches in horror, but the bombs keep falling. The international community's response to the Palestinian plight has been mixed. Some nations, particularly in the West, have traditionally aligned themselves with Israel. This unwavering support has emboldened Israel, creating a culture of impunity. On the other side are those who stand in solidarity with Palestine, calling for an end to the occupation. Caught in the middle are the majority of nations, hesitant to take sides. The Palestinian people are tired of words, tired of empty promises. They demand action, they demand justice. The escalating violence in Palestine has raised a chilling question. Are we witnessing a genocide in slow motion? The systematic dispossession of Palestinians, the confinement in overcrowded enclaves, and the denial of basic human rights point to a deliberate attempt to erase the Palestinian people. The international community has a moral imperative to act. The Genocide Convention obligates signatory states to prevent and punish the crime of genocide. This includes diplomatic pressure, economic sanctions, and the prosecution of perpetrators. To remain silent is to become complicit in a potential genocide. Despite the relentless oppression, the Palestinian spirit remains unbroken. The Palestinian people have demonstrated remarkable resilience, courage, and determination. Their resistance takes many forms, from armed struggle to non-violent protests. They resist by holding on to their land, their culture, their identity. The Palestinian spirit is a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of the human spirit. Their struggle is a reminder that the fight for justice and equality is a universal one. Iran's involvement in the Palestinian struggle is deeply rooted in both ideology and politics. Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran has positioned itself as a staunch supporter of the Palestinian cause. Iran has provided substantial financial, military and logistical backing to various Palestinian groups. This support is part of a broader strategy to counter Israeli influence and assert its own power in the region. For many Palestinians, Iran's unwavering support is a beacon of hope. Despite international pressure, Iran has remained resolute in its support for Palestine. Iran's support for Palestinian militant groups like Hamas and Islamic Jihad is a key component of its broader strategy of proxy warfare. This approach allows Iran to exert influence in the region without direct military confrontation. Through financial aid, military training, and the supply of weapons, Iran has significantly bolstered the capabilities of these groups. This dynamic has created a complex web of dependencies and alliances. Critics argue that Iran's support for militant groups exacerbates the conflict. However, Iran shows no signs of changing its approach, viewing its support for Palestinian militants as a core component of its regional strategy. Section 3. Diplomatic maneuvers. Iran's political strategy. Iran's involvement in the Palestinian conflict extends beyond military support to include a robust diplomatic strategy. This strategy aims to garner international support for the Palestinian cause and to isolate Israel diplomatically. Iran utilizes international forums to advocate for Palestinian rights and condemn Israeli actions. This diplomatic offensive is designed to shift global opinion and rally support for the Palestinian struggle. Iran's efforts highlight the humanitarian aspects of the conflict, portraying Israel as an aggressor. Iranian leaders call for international sanctions against Israel and urge countries to cut ties with the Israeli government. These efforts aim to create a global consensus against Israeli policies and pressure Israel to change its approach. Section 4. Regional tensions, Iran versus Israel. The rivalry between Iran and Israel is one of the most significant and volatile elements of the Middle Eastern geopolitical landscape. This rivalry is driven by deep-seated ideological, political, and strategic differences. Iran views Israel as an illegitimate state built on the dispossession of Palestinians, while Israel perceives Iran as a major threat to its security. This mutual hostility has fueled a series of confrontations, both direct and indirect, that have shaped the dynamics of the region. One of the primary arenas of this confrontation is the ongoing conflict in Palestine. Iran's support for Palestinian militant groups is seen by Israel as a direct threat to its security. In response, Israel has conducted numerous military operations aimed at weakening these groups and disrupting the flow of Iranian support. These operations often result in significant collateral damage, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and the West Bank. The tension between Iran and Israel is not confined to Palestine. It extends to other parts of the region, including Syria and Lebanon. In Syria, Iranian forces and their allies have clashed with Israeli forces on multiple occasions, leading to a dangerous escalation of hostilities. In Lebanon, Israel views Hezbollah, backed by Iran, as a significant threat, leading to periodic military confrontations. These regional tensions create a highly unstable environment with the potential for broader conflict always looming. The rivalry also plays out in the realm of international diplomacy. Israel lobbies extensively to isolate Iran, emphasizing the threat posed by Iran's nuclear program and its support for terrorism. Conversely, Iran seeks to highlight Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories and its human rights violations. This diplomatic battle influences global perceptions and policies, affecting international efforts to resolve the conflict. Section 5. The ripple effect. Broader Middle Eastern implications. Iran's involvement in the Palestinian conflict has significant implications for the broader Middle East. Its support for Palestinian groups and its confrontation with Israel have a ripple effect, influencing the policies and actions of other regional actors. This interconnected web of relationships and conflicts creates a complex and often volatile geopolitical environment. Iran's alliances with groups in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen create a network of actors that can be mobilized in support of its regional agenda. This network enhances Iran's influence and contributes to the continuation of conflicts. Iran's actions have prompted reactions from other regional powers, particularly Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. These countries have taken steps to counter Iran, including forming alliances with Israel and supporting rival groups. The broader implications of Iran's involvement also extend to global powers. The United States and its allies have imposed stringent sanctions on Iran. Russia and China have sought to bolster their ties with Iran, viewing it as a strategic partner. These global dynamics add another layer of complexity to the conflict. Ultimately, Iran's role in the Palestinian conflict is a key factor in the broader geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. The Palestinian struggle has always been a focal point in the Arab world, evoking deep-seated emotions and influencing regional dynamics. The Abraham Accords have been a game-changer, reflecting a strategic realignment driven by shared concerns about Iran and regional security. However, renewed violence in Palestine tests these relationships, exposing the fragility of peace and deep divisions. Public opinion remains overwhelmingly sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, sparking protests and putting pressure on leaders. Governments are caught between commitments to the Abraham Accords, relationships with the West, and their own population's demands. The United States has long played a pivotal role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, wielding significant influence as Israel's closest ally. However, the US approach has faced growing criticism, with accusations of bias towards Israel. The current crisis has reignited debates about the US role and its commitment to a two-state solution. The US government has consistently provided Israel with substantial military and financial aid. Critics argue this support enables Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories. The Biden administration has maintained this support, albeit with calls for de-escalation and diplomacy. The US faces mounting pressure to re-evaluate its role and actively pursue a just and lasting peace. While the US continues to be a dominant force in the Middle East, China's growing influence in the region adds a new layer of complexity to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. China's approach, characterized by pragmatism, economic engagement, and a non-interference policy, stands in contrast to the U.S. more interventionist approach. This difference has allowed China to cultivate relationships with both Israel and Palestinian factions, positioning itself as a potential mediator and a rising power capable of shaping the regional order. China's interests in the Middle East are primarily economic and strategic. The region is crucial for China's energy security, serving as a major source of oil and gas. Moreover, the Middle East is a vital link in China's Belt and Road Initiative, a massive infrastructure project aimed at connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa. As such, China has a vested interest in regional stability and peaceful conflict resolution. China's approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been characterized by calls for restraint, dialogue, and a two-state solution based on international law. It has consistently supported Palestinian statehood at the United Nations and provided humanitarian aid to the Palestinian people. At the same time, China has cultivated strong economic ties with Israel, becoming a major trading partner and investor in Israeli technology. This balanced approach has allowed China to gain a foothold in the region without getting bogged down in the complexities of the conflict. While China's influence on the peace process remains limited, its growing economic and diplomatic clout gives it leverage. As China's presence in the Middle East grows, its role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is likely to become more prominent, potentially offering alternative approaches to mediation and conflict resolution. Russia, a traditional power broker in the Middle East, plays a complex and multifaceted role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. With its historical ties to the Arab world, its support for Palestinian statehood, and its strategic interests in the region, Russia seeks to position itself as a key player in the search for peace. However, its relationships with various actors, including Israel, Iran, and Syria, require a delicate balancing act, often making its stance appear ambiguous and its influence difficult to gauge. Russia has consistently advocated for a two-state solution based on international law and the pre-1967 borders. It has maintained its support for Palestinian statehood at the United Nations and condemned Israeli settlement activity in the occupied territories. However, Russia has also cultivated pragmatic ties with Israel, recognizing its security concerns and engaging in dialogue on regional issues. Russia's relationship with Iran adds another layer of complexity to its role in the conflict. As a key ally of Iran, Russia finds itself indirectly supporting groups like Hamas, which are designated as terrorist organizations by Israel and the West. This alliance complicates Russia's efforts to mediate between Israel and Palestinian factions, and raises concerns about its commitment to combating terrorism. Moreover, Russia's involvement in the Syrian civil war has further entangled its interests in the region. Its support for the Syrian government, which is also backed by Iran, has brought it into indirect conflict with Israel, which has conducted numerous airstrikes against Iranian targets in Syria. This complex web of alliances and rivalries limits Russia's ability to play a decisive role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, despite its stated commitment to peace and its historical influence in the region. The Palestinian struggle, a story etched in resilience and resistance, stands at a critical juncture. The recent escalation of violence, the heart-wrenching images of suffering, and the escalating geopolitical tensions serve as a stark reminder of the urgency for a just and lasting peace. The world, often a bystander to this enduring conflict, can no longer afford to remain silent. The stakes are too high, the human cost too great. The path forward is fraught with challenges. Decades of mistrust, broken promises, and failed negotiations have created a seemingly insurmountable divide. Yet, even amidst the rubble and despair, glimmers of hope endure. The Palestinian people, despite facing unimaginable hardships, have not abandoned their dream of freedom and self-determination. Their spirit of resistance, their unwavering belief in a better future, serves as an inspiration to us all. The international community has a moral imperative to act, to move beyond empty rhetoric, and to take concrete steps towards a just and lasting peace. This requires a fundamental shift in approach, one that prioritizes human rights, upholds international law, and addresses the root causes of the conflict. It demands holding all parties accountable for their actions, whether it be the expansion of illegal settlements, the indiscriminate use of force against civilians, or the support for militant groups. The time for complacency is over. The Palestinian people have endured enough. The world must choose to continue down a path of violence and despair, or to forge a new path, one paved with justice, equality, and a shared commitment to a future where Palestinians and Israelis can finally live together in peace and security. The choice is ours. Let us choose wisely, for the sake of future generations and for the very soul of humanity.